So welcome back to our intermediate sampler for July 2024 here at Close to Home in Southington. So remember to bring in your completed June block beginning Friday, July 12th at 10 a.m. You have until July 31st to do so to receive the July kit free. And you can always check the end of your instructions for a complete list of dates for the year. Don't forget, now through Saturday, July 13th, almost everything is 33% off during our Christmas in July sale. So let's take a look at the July block this month. We will be working with the perfect rectangle ruler that finishes at 4 by 8. We'll also be using the folded corner clipper to create our corners on our perfect rectangle unit, and also to construct our pinwheel in the center. Now you might want to note that because there are no lines going all the way through the block, this will be a partial seam. So we're going to begin and sew only half of this unit, and then we're going to add as we go around. Okay. Some of the cutting that we're going to be doing for the multi-swirl and the peach, you want to cut your kit fabric 8.5. And it's approximately 11 inches, so measure your kit. Make sure that you put plenty of Mary Ellen's Best Press on the kits prior to cutting. There are a lot of angles this month, and we don't want any stretching. So our peach and multi-swirl is 8.5 by about 11 inches, and this is the one we're going to use our perfect rectangle to cut our triangles. The rest of them are for the folded corner clipper. The deep red fabric, we're going to try to get 8 2.5-inch squares. So strip 2.5, and you're going to cut 4, another one, and the last strip at 2.5, the third strip, it will be 10 inches, but you only need approximately 7 inches. That and the coral are going to be our pinwheel for the center. So those are both strips, and we're going to use our folded corner clipper to cut 4 half-square triangles with those 2 units. And then of course the last one is a little white, 1.5. We'll need 4 squares at 1.5, again for our folded corner clipper for the corners of our perfect rectangle unit. Okay, let's get going. So the first thing I do want to mention for the folded corner clipper are the coral and the deep red. We're going to put these right sides together, and we're going to go ahead and cut these at 2.5 while they're together. So I'm just going to trim off one side and measure a 2.5. And then we'll just use our folded corner clipper. I'm not going to go and cut or sew the pinwheel together, but we've done this in the past. So once I have my 2.5, I'm going to use the folded corner clipper with the blunt edge up at the top of my strip and the 2.5-inch marking along the bottom. So I definitely need at least one nice clean edge here. So you can walk around the table to do this. Please don't cut towards yourself like I just did. All right, so we're going to start with our first half square triangle. And we're going to sew from this 90-degree corner all the way down at 1/4 inch. And we're going to get 4 of these units, and we're going to take all of them actually over to the sewing machine and make our half square triangles. So we're just going to continue to make 4 half square triangles. All right, when those half square triangles are sewn and pressed, we're going to come out. We're going to press to the coral each time. We're going to make 2 units and sew them together. All right, I'll use that in a minute. So let's talk a little bit about the perfect triangle. You can get any size perfect rectangle. It's 2 times the height. The height is 2 times the width, rather, and anywhere from a 1-inch finished all the way down to a 9-inch finished rectangle, perfect rectangle. Today we're making a 4x8, so we have to cut our strips 8.5. We're always adding 1/2 inch to the height of this ruler. Okay, so in the past we have used this ruler, but this time we're using the 8.5 measurement. So let's cut a couple of these and we'll sew one, and we'll start with our folded corner clipper unit. All right, so the best thing to do to explain this is, because each of these is pretty much the same direction, we're going to put our 2 fabrics right sides up. Okay, so the multi-swirl facing up and the peach facing up. As you can see, this is the wrong side and this is the wrong side. So both of them, very important to keep those right sides up. You also want to give it a little bit of a measure to see which side is approximately 11 inches and it goes in this direction, or this direction is a little bit short. So I'm going to cut my 8.5 inch strip down the 11-inch way. And now I have a ruler. How nice. It's 8.5 inches wide. So I'm just going to cut this side. Whoops. Wow. It's supposed to, oh, you know what? It's my mat. That's what it is. Got to replace my mat. All right, and then I have an 8.5 this way. All right, so now that I have my 8.5 inch strip, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab my perfect rectangle by Creative Grids. Again, just like the folded corner clipper, I have a blunt edge right up at the top, and that's going to go at the top of my 2 fabrics, and at the bottom I'm going to be looking for the 8.5 inch line. Here's 8.5, and it goes straight across. It's a black line that goes all the way across. That gets lined up at the bottom. All right, so this one's actually going to take 2 cuts. I'm just going to turn it because I'm not able to cut on this side. So it's going to be cut this way just to clean up the edge. And I wish I had my turntable. And I'm going to cut it again. Okay. The one thing you do have to remember with these perfect rectangles is there's a little notch up at the top that we want to make sure we trim off that 90-degree corner up here, because that is what's going to help us set this so it sits correctly on top of each other. All right, so that pair of multi-swirl and peach, all we have to do is turn it, and they're both right sides up. And then when we sew them, we're going to take that notch, and that notch is going to go right along the bottom of that one. So here's my notch that I cut, and it's going to get pushed right down into the corner so that it's even with the bottom of the other one. All right, so it's the same on this side. As you can see, that the notch goes right along the top of my multi. So we're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way down. And I should remind you, just keep going with this. You're going to get 4 of those, cutting the notch every time. So let's take this over. We'll sew on real quick. Really make sure that's lined up right against the edge. hold on. Make sure those raw edges are right on top of each other. Nobody's gonna shift. And when you get down to the bottom, make sure that notch is still parallel with the peach fabric. If that's on the bottom, doesn't matter which one's on the top or the bottom. And it's gonna come right out the notch right here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and press this. It doesn't really matter for the block which way you press it, but I find that if I pressed it toward the multi-swirl, there was less showing of the seam allowance underneath it. So I'll just go ahead and press that real quick. And again, make sure it's nice and open. You don't want to fold any of your fabric. You want to make sure that your fabrics are nicely separated. And this is a 4.5 by 8.5 perfect rectangle. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to add some folded corner clipper units to this piece, and that'll be that unit. So to do that, each of these 90-degree corners, not where it's seamed, but on the 90-degree plain corners, we're going to add one of these deep red 2.5-inch squares. Now you can do them all 4 at once, and then you can come back and do the other 4. So what we're going to do is add the deep red to the corner, use our folded corner clipper. This is nothing new for a lot of you. I'm just going to place it in the 2.5-inch area with the line going up the side of my square, blunt edge at the top, and I'm going to give this a nice trim. And we're going to go over, we're going to sew that again from the point to the point, and we're going to press it toward the red. Hold on, we want to make sure everything's nicely lined up. If you find that things tend to shift on you a little bit by the time they get under the foot, you can use a stiletto, which is a very sharp point. You can use a seam ripper, the point of a seam ripper, just to hold that in place. I find that when I'm doing pinwheels, a lot of times, half square triangles, it gets to the end and it's not a whole lot of fabric to hold on to under the foot. So it does tend to separate a little bit, so I'll use a seam ripper or a stiletto. So let's go ahead and press this over to the red, and we'll do the peach side. So again, I just hold it, give it a little bit of a pull, just to separate the seam, and a little bit of heat. Just press it. Okay, let's go add the other one. So again, the peach is going to get this one. And I'm going to turn it around so it's easy for me to trim. Add my folded corner clipper. Trim it. We're going to press, we're going to sew that. Get back into the corner. There we go. Corner to corner. And the last one we're going to add, again, we're just going to go ahead and press this one. This one gets pressed again toward the, out to the corner, just like this. Give it a little finger press, a little bit of heat. And hold it just for a count of maybe 3 or 4, just to hold that down. And now we're going to add the last piece, which is our white. And the same thing we did with the dark red, making sure that we're going to put it on the multi-swirl side. We're going to make sure that right sides are together. And now we're going to add this one to the red. We're getting smaller and smaller as we go, but since this was a 1.5 inch square, we're looking for the 1.5 inch marking on our folded corner clipper. Blunt side at the top of the white, and we're just going to trim that corner right off. Go ahead and sew this. Out corners, in the corner, and out the corner. And one more little finger press, and we're still working with a 4.5 by 8.5 inch unfinished unit. And now that we have 4 of these, we can go ahead and add this around the pinwheel. So let's create our block. So we're going to take a pin and the pinwheel, and each of these white corners goes to the outside. So we're going to start with this one, and then we're going to add this one. And the white corner goes to the outside, and the white corner to the outside. So we'll start with this unit, and we're going to start about halfway down our 2 units here. We're going to start sewing with a forward stitch, a backward stitch just to lock it, or a couple locking stitches, and we're going to sew the rest of the way. All right, so let's put this together. And I'm just going to put a pin where I said about halfway up, and we're going to start sewing here, and we're going to finish down. So a little locking stitch down to the end. So let's go ahead and do this. I don't want to sew on my pin. So a couple stitches forward, couple back. Get that right in the corner. And we're just going to finish the seam like we normally would. All right. All right. So here we have our first unit. And I can go ahead and press this. I'm going to press it toward my perfect rectangle unit, and the next thing we're going to do, and you can put heat on it, I'm just going to finger press it for now, is go ahead, get our next unit ready, and we're going to go ahead and sew this one. Alright, so we're going to turn and come down this side. So let's go down all 4 sides, matching up our corners. Matching up this corner. Okay. Let's add the next one. So that was the bottom. Okay. Oops. So we'll take the next one, add this one, again match each of the corners. So this side with the top. We did a partial seam with the basket a few months back, so hopefully this will be a little bit of a refresher for you. And one more side. Okay, here's still my partial seam. I've added this one, I've added this one. Again, I'm just going to give it a finger press. Again, you can heat, you can put a little bit of heat on there. We're going to move this one out of our way, and we're going to add the 4th perfect rectangle unit. Last one, line it up. Again, this is free to do, it's not attached, so you can go all the way through just like you would a normal seam. And we're going to trim it, trim our threads. And now we're going to finish our seam. Last one. So we still have, I'll put it in this order the way it's been. So now all we have to do is fold this back. I'm going to give this again another little finger press. Sorry. If you want, you can press it. And I'm going to line this up in the corner and complete my seam, and my block will be done. Last one. Let's match this up. And then we'll give it a nice press at the very end. Okay. And because we're only going halfway, we want to stop, give it a couple reverse stitches, and back, just to secure it. All right, let's give this a nice press. See how it came out. We'll start with this one, press it away, go to this one, press it away, and hopefully this matched up pretty good. So you want to make sure you still have your 1/4 inch on these edges, because you're going to have to add your borders or another block or whatever it is that you want to do. All right, there you go. Hope you enjoyed July's block, and come on in where it's nice and cool here at Close to Home in Southington. Thanks for watching.